Roll call, please.
Counsel Honan.
Here.
Counsel Pisillo.
Here.
Counsel Munson.
Here.
Counsel Belcher.
Here.
Counsel DeMarco.
Here.
Counsel Flockhart.
Here.
Counsel Aiello.
Here.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Here.
President Lettieri.
Here.
Thank you.
Ask everyone to please rise for the pledge,
It's executive session.
which will be led by Councilor Aiello. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me, what it doesn't say on the website is when the regular meeting will,
Immediately following, probably 6:45.
or thank you.
So the town council is going to enter into an executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Paragraph 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. I'd like to ask for a motion to go into executive session. Motion by Councilor Aiello, second by Councilor Belcher. Roll call, please.
Counsel Honan.
Here.
Counsel Pisillo.
Yes.
Counsel Munson.
Yes.
Counsel Belcher.
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco.
Yes.
Counsel Flockhart.
Yes.
Counsel Aiello.
Yes.
Counsel Vice President Ruggiero.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, we will be entering into executive session now. We will come out of executive session and continue with the meeting as scheduled. I would assume the executive session should be about 45 minutes. Thank you.
It's a little.
Council meeting is back in session. We have minutes from November 15th as circulated. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Councilor DeMarco, second by Councilor Belcher. Any discussion on the minutes?
Yes.
Councilor Flockhart.
Please correct sparrows to sharrows, and I question your spelling on sharrows. I'm not sure you're wrong, but it doesn't look right to me.
I thought I looked it up. I'll double check it.
Oh, well, if you looked it up,
Nope,
then
I'll
you know
double check.
better than I do. But sparrows should go.
Right, there's a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Councilor Flockhart. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. General information and recommendation. We do not have anything this evening. We have a continued public hearing on water sewer enterprise fund budget amendment. And this is a public hearing that was open. We will open the public hearing. This was a public hearing that was opened at a previous meeting. And this is more of a accounting issue than anything else. When we had done the budget, we had accounted for $220,000 as part of the budget for capital purchases of a sewer vac truck replacement, emergency generator from Pico Ave pump station and water distribution system, hydraulics module, and a PRV improvements. We have been told that it would be much better to use that out of reserve. So this is a change in accounting, basically. So that would have been appropriated through the user fee. So technically, we should have this $220,000 back at the end of fiscal '23, that we should be able to replace it in the reserve account. Is there anyone in the audience, or maybe our DPW director could explain if there's anything you'd like to add to this? No?
No, I mean,
Okay.
that's, what you said is accurate. We
Yep.
should get it back by the end of the year.
Anyone else that would like to speak in favor or against this? Anyone in the council would like to speak on this? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. We will open another public hearing on the Center Business District signage. I will ask Vice President Ruggiero to update us on that.
Sure, so, at our last council meeting, I believe, I had circulated a motion that passed out of rules and ordinances regarding, parking time limits in the center business district. that passed out of rules and ordinances. It is on the agenda tonight. It's coupled with the municipal lot ordinance that I also circulated in between our last meeting and this evening. As far as Center Business District signage goes, the proposal pretty much follows the MAPC recommendation, with the gist of it being 2-hour parking in Winthrop Center from 7 to 7, with the exception of a handful of spots that will be used as 15-minute parking. These spots are 2 in front of the Black Strap and the convenience store, and 1 next to Cafe Delight. Those will be the designated 15-minute spots. The rest will be 2-hour parking from 7 to 7. The rationale behind this is because parking down the center is a resource, and we need to manage that public resource like we do most other public resources. It's not the most exciting thing to talk about. I don't think we all feel great about it, but at the end of the day, there are plenty of downtowns throughout the Commonwealth that have parking restrictions. What we're not talking about is meters. We're just talking about what our ordinances are gonna say and what we're requesting of folks who park down there. So I guess we can get the discussion kicked off with that. That's the gist of the recommendation that you all have in your email and in the agenda package, but if there are any other specific questions, we can talk about those now or later or whenever.
Does this include, before we open it up, there is a handicap spot in front of, for kids only building there, that is supposedly being moved across the street, so makes more sense, and it's closer to a crosswalk. Is that accurate? I'll ask the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and go to the DPW director first.
Yeah, so my knowledge on that handicap sign, the one you're referring to, was that it wasn't changing sides of streets. It was just moving back towards the crosswalk. I don't know how crossing the street would be any closer to that crosswalk. I don't disagree that potentially another one may be needed on the opposite side of the street for, the Cummings building and things like that, but, it was, the intent was to move it back a spot closer to the crosswalk on the same side.
And there was also one in front of a two-family house that
That I'd have to look at to
may
see.
have been for specific
That
use
may,
that is
that
no
may have
longer
been permitted through the,
handicap access.
handicap, committee, exactly, yes. And if that is still it's still a needed sign, then that would probably remain.
But if it is not, it could be removed.
Yes, but it can't,
Have to
again, it
go
has to
through the
come
committee.
from that committee, if it was permitted through them, yep.
Councilor DeMarco?
Yeah, Vice President Ruggiero, I need you to fact check me on my facts here because I was on the committee with you. First off, we were talking about 7 at 7 down the center being 2-hour parking. So, but what that really means is, all right, 7 a.m., you got 2 hours. So as long as you're out by 9 a.m., you're okay. And if you park at 5 p.m., 7 p.m. comes along, you're okay. So essentially what it's saying is, as long as you're out of here by 9 a.m., and as long as you're out of here by 5 p.m., or back in here by 5 p.m., you can park overnight, you can, correct, am I correct? Yeah,
So thank you.
Yeah.
So the way this would work is exactly that. You could be parked in a spot, anything highlighted in blue here, starting at 5 p.m. Assuming you have a resident sticker, you are good until 9 a.m. the next morning.
yeah, okay, thank you. And then also the lot across the street from the hockey rink, as well as the Citizens Bank parking lot, that does not apply to the 2-hour parking, does it
I
not?
think that will be discussed in the
That's
next
in
public
municipal,
hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that hasn't been settled, so that might end up being full-time, it could be,
And-
yeah.
And so I'll also point out here on Putnam Street, there are spots that are not part of this, and that's done intentional, kind of where my cursor is here.
Okay.
You can park here for an unlimited amount of time, assuming you have a resident sticker and you're not there for more than 72 hours, because that's a separate ordinance altogether.
Okay.
So that's built in
Okay.
to that as we had discussed.
All right, thank you.
Council Flockhart.
You keep saying resident sticker, does that mean people from out of town aren't allowed to park in the center?
People from out of town are not allowed to park on our streets from 1 AM to 5 AM, no matter where they are.
Okay, but during the regular time,
They can park wherever. That's for 2 hours. And anything in
but not
blue.
in that red area.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, 'cause that's no parking, just generally. Like, those aren't striped for spots, yeah.
Anybody, Councilor Flockhart, anybody under this proposal, if they park for more than 2 hours, whether they have a Winthrop sticker or not, during those hours, could get a ticket. Yeah.
Council Belcher.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend Rules and Ordinance and the business community. I went to most, if not all, of the meetings on this, and I think that these ordinances do a really great job of striking a balance between protecting resident parking for people who live in the CBD and the businesses. So I think this is a really good way to meet in the middle on this.
Council Munson.
Thank you for saying that, Councilor Belcher. That's very kind of you. And I also want to say a special thank you to Mike DeLuiso. He has been very thorough and very comprehensive and has led most of the conversations. We've just tweaked and commented and pushed back when needed, but he has been the leading force behind this, and I think we're getting close to really becoming a well-balanced parking community. I know it's the largest debate of, point of debate and contention in this town is lack of parking, but we only have so much of it, so we're trying to do the best at regulating for both the residents and the business community. So, and I think as Hannah said, we've striked that balance, but it's not a slate set in stone. This is a moving target, and if it's needed to in the future, it always can be revised as needed.
Council Aiello.
Just real quick, great work. I agree with my fellow councilors. The key is to find the money to be able to put the signage up and do an educational program for everybody as soon as we can.
And that's, I was gonna say that at some point now, if this is passed in this, at some point this evening, and it's passed with the recommendations, we will need to find some money to buy some new signage, and hopefully we would be able to reuse some other signage in other places in town. But yes, and it would also be, I'm sure, weather dependent on putting in poles and stuff like that in this weather, but it would be a good step to finally put this to bed. Anyone from the public wish to be here? Director Calla.
I just want to raise, one question. The language, the 7 AM to 5 PM, going to 7 AM to 7 PM. From the conversation between Councilor Ruggiero and Councilor DeMarco, it doesn't really seem like that 7 PM change is all that significant. We're sitting on $6,000 worth of signs that say 7 AM to 5 PM right now, that were deliverables as part of that CBD project. Is it that necessary to spend another $6,000 on signage to make it say 7 AM to 7 PM?
Well, the biggest thing I think that came out of this, if you're going 7 to 5, that means someone has the ability to take a spot from 3 PM to 9 AM, right? So it means 18 hours of every day, those spots can just be used. Which overnight, obviously, isn't a major deal, but during business hours or restaurants or whatever, it's taken up, needed spots.
Assuming that that's being, we get enforcement down there.
Everything's
So,
assuming it's enforced. If it's
Right,
no
and-
enforcement,
and this
there's
isn't
no
speaking
signs needed.
bad against the police department or anybody, just talking resources. Is anybody gonna be down there at 3 PM to see if someone's parking there at 3 PM or 5 PM? It's a significant cost. If that signage from 7 AM to 5 PM works, I just wanted to raise it.
No,
And
totally
then the
understand.
placement of the poles down there, I wanna make sure that everybody's in agreement where these poles are gonna be, because there's a lot of poles already installed.
Mhm.
And putting new poles in new
The new
sidewalks is, it's not gonna match perfectly. So we're gonna start creating a different look down there real quick if we don't do it right.
Thank you. Councilor DeMarco.
Real quick, Steve, you said about $6,000 worth of signage?
of the 7 AM to 5 PM signs that were, you know, as part of the project,
Yeah.
that are in my office, I have about $2,000 worth of 15-minute parking signs. It looks like that's a loss. And, you know, those are deliverables on the project that was voted on.
Okay.
So I understand there will be some sort of loss, but if we could, I just was raising the question.
Yeah,
If
no,
7
no,
AM
that's
to
fair,
5
that's
PM
fair.
Works, it's a savings.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you.
Counselor Honan?
Just a note on that. I've been married to a sign guy for about 20 years. And changing lettering, numbering, weatherproof lettering on a sign, a public municipal sign, is cheap money. It's not gonna cost $6,000 to change numbers on municipal signs and weatherproof.
These aren't numbers though, Counselor. These are painted on signs, so
But adding a vinyl number, a sticker,
if
money.
the council is okay with sticking stickers over the painted signs, then that's your prerogative.
Counselor Belcher, did you have your hand?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that's definitely worth thinking about. A $6,000 sunk cost is pretty significant. But I think the change from 5 to 7 was really, like it's been said, for the businesses to make sure that nobody's parked in front of their business from 3 PM on, you know what I mean? It covers a significant chunk of business hours during the day.
I just wanted to raise the question.
Yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about.
First I heard of it, that's good.
And just, sorry,
Sure. Vice President Ruggiero?
Thank you,
Then we'll
Mike.
go to,
just as, you know, we had, I want to thank the business community, especially Betsy from the chamber. She was at all of these public meetings as well. We had I'd say up to a dozen business owners at our first meeting. Some fewer amount at our second meeting. I don't remember exactly who was there and who was on Zoom, but these were very well attended by members of the business community as well as the councilors here, Councilor Aiello, Council President Lettieri, and of course the committee members, and of course Councilor Belcher were all at some of these meetings as well. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone on the board at least. So.
Mr. Dowd?
Thank you. I went through the center last week, and it was very busy, and there were a lot of cars there. And it turned to go up Bartlett by the banks, et cetera. And I have a big pickup truck, and that's what I need to work with. But it was a very narrow opening with parking on both sides. I'm wondering if the sidewalks were pushed out on either side, or, I don't think a tractor trailer would make it up there.
Sidewalk, from what I understand, sidewalks were not widened at all. There was a bump out made in front of Savisi's that was
No, that
definitely
that
bigger
wasn't
than
it.
what it was
It just
before.
seems-
But
it
the
just
distance
seems more
from
narrow than
from curb to
it was
curb
before.
has not changed. It-
Yeah. Oh, there were a lot of cars that were big, big
Mhm.
SUVs and stuff, but it was very narrow. I don't think a tractor trailer would get up there carefully, but I'm not sure if anybody has an answer to that.
Well, there's limited, there has been a change, I believe, in the size of the trucks that are allowed down there.
It seems very narrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice President Ruggiero?
Just to that point, we took up the physical spots and where they were gonna be painted a few months ago, just to remind folks here. This isn't changing where spots are, this isn't changing width of spots, this is just determining how long someone can leave their car in a spot. So none of that is changing. A few months ago, we had a diagram that showed, projections of fire trucks and trailer trucks that went through the center. So this is the second to last step. The municipal law ordinance is the last step, but this is the second to last step to kind of putting this to rest, hopefully from an ordinance position.
Any other questions on this public hearing? When we close that public hearing, we will open up another public hearing, and since Vice President Ruggiero did such a great job with the first one, we're gonna let him do another one. This is on municipal lots.
Yep, and this was a conversation that came from the conversation that we just had. And so the question says, well, if I need to do something in Winthrop Center that takes longer than 2 hours during this time frame, where can I go park? Prior to the municipal lot ordinance that everyone has in front of them, there was no municipal lot ordinance. There was just a subsection in another ordinance that read, 2-hour parking in every municipal lot. And that's included in the motion, removing that language and entering in new language. What the committee did with the help of Mike DeLuiso from, well, he wears a few hats, but from the town, from TSAC and the administrative branch of government, we came up with a recommendation to allow for some longer parking in each of the municipal lots in the center, and then a few others sprinkled throughout town for a variety of different reasons. What I have on the screen here is the Hagman extension, the Citizens Bank lot, the lot in front of the auditorium, and, the gym, and the lot in front of Larson Rink. Those are all 4-hour parking. So if you have an errand in Winthrop Center that requires you to be there for longer than 2 hours, or you maybe working a shift, you can park in this lot for up to 4 hours, anything here in green. With the exception of this Walden Street lot, there is no parking restriction in this lot. The rationale behind that is because we want to encourage employees who are working a full 8, 10, 12-hour shift, whatever have you, to park here, saving these spots for customers, people running, something a little bit longer than your average, 15, 20-minute, 2-hour event in Winthrop Center. This also ties in to the school district up here. If you're picking up children at the school, you could park here. If you work the day at the E.B. Newton School, you could park here if all these spots are full. So, if we're going to be using this multi-purpose for school, rink activities, baseball field activities, and also center activities, we wanted to leave this unlimited. This lot combined with these spots on Putnam leaves a total of 31 spots where you can park unrestricted, assuming you have a resident sticker and you're not there for longer than 72 hours. In addition to that, most other municipal lots are taken care of as well. I'm gonna unplug this for a second just because the whole town's in here. Maybe click around here, but
He's trying to detail the rest of the lots in the town, and we
Yeah.
went through every single one and delegated the responsibilities and the parking availability. For the most part, we only affected in the Rules and Ordinance Committee, the ones that were in business districts. The ones that were not business districts were left alone to remain at the previous time frame, which was
2 hours.
2 hours.
So here's how this motion would read. 2-hour parking, Monday through Friday, excluding state and federal holidays, as we know. This is the list of municipal lots, and here are the exceptions to that. So the Crest Ave lot, again, that's in a business district, that gets the 4-hour designation. Hagman Road Extension, Delby's Corner, Larson Rink, Pauline Street. The tennis court lot, we also left unlimited, with the same rationale as it being in a school district. Students, employees, parents, they park there for longer than 4 hours sometimes. Football games, people park there longer than 4 hours. So, we recognize this is a step. Is this perfect? I mean, we'll find out. But we need to put some designation on these lots in order to solve that problem in Winthrop Center of where do I park if I have an errand that requires me to be down Winthrop Center longer than 2 hours, so.
Counselor Flockhart.
I'm concerned about your town hall lot, because that also functions as the library lot, and functions at the library could run well over 2 hours. I'm not worried about it, even though I'm gonna be doing it, because it's not enforced, but,
Yeah,
But it is gonna be an issue with the library
so
functions.
the rationale here is to save the town hall lot for, residents to come in and run an errand or have a meeting. There is the lot across the street, behind the church and behind for kids only, that is also considered, a lot for the purposes of doing business in either the library or in town hall. So instead of walking up the steps to get to the library, you can just cross the street to get to the library. It's actually closer if you park in the lot behind FKO.
Okay, if
So-
you say so.
And we've
Sales
thought
pitch.
about these scenarios, so I'm glad we're talking about it again, though, just so everyone's clear.
Council Aiello.
And I assume, Steve, I saw nothing, and I'm gonna pivot to the town manager, nothing that clarified the ownership of that lot you were describing where kids only is and all that. The council has, since Terry Delahanty's days, requested a clear map about who owns what, has yet to receive that. I think that's critically important. Even tonight, pulling in, the same company that's been parking there all day, overnight, it's a PFM Executive Car Service, they're again tonight.
Yep, we're working on it.
And,
We got rid of a lot of the school vehicles there. The next is we're gonna enforce that and then clarify. The church has marked their spots. You can see those. They think they own a few more, so I gotta meet with them and kind of clarify that, because we've also got a disposal company that's in there and a few other people, so
yeah.
it's in progress. Yep,
It's still not under control.
I got understand.
And this has been going on since March. I know you came here later than that,
Yep.
but it's not that complicated.
No, I get it.
So that practice needs to end.
John, did you have a comment?
Yes, I was wondering about the restrictions on the handicap parking spots. Is there a time limit for those? And if so, will they conform to the rest of the town? Because I've known people in the past who have a placard who don't deserve a placard, using these spots and staying there for much longer time than they deserve to. Was that included in your discussions?
So, and if anyone has, what I believe to be true is that handicap spots are not subject to any parking restrictions, I guess, other than the 72-hour, you can't be there for 3 days. So, Mike DeLuiso, I see, is also on, but if you want to just fact check that.
Yep.
Or Tony.
Yes,
Mike.
Councilor, if I can, yeah, the handicap spaces by state law are exempt from time limits as long as the vehicle displays a valid handicap placard, handicap plate, or disabled license plate.
Thank you.
Mr. Dowd?
Thank you. I was around when they built the lot, when they laid out the lot behind the Methodist church. And they got the money from the town, I guess, and the reason they built that lot was for the employees of the town hall and the employees of the library. The reason they did that was because they left this lot for visitors to the town hall with handicap access and an elevator. So, there seems to be some confusion about who should be in that lot. But if you go back in the history of when they built it, the reason was designated parking for employees of the town hall and the library, and this back lot was for visitors to the town hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Munson?
Thank you, Council President. Town manager, can you clarify, is there some kind of directive to all the employees of the town hall and the library to park a certain spot, just out of curiosity?
There may be, none that I've been brought to my attention in the last 6 months, but there may be. I parked over there a few times just because with the school and the drop-offs, this lot gets a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
With the school across the street, so. Obviously the employees park here, so if there is a directive, it's not being followed right now, so I'd have to find out what we have.
But is there a continuous problem with the spots in this lot, do you know? I mean, does it seem like
In the
it's-
middle of the day there is, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
from, 9 AM to 3 PM when the school, after that it frees up a little bit, but, yeah, when town hall's in business and the library's cranking and the schools across the street, yeah, it gets a little hectic in here.
Thank you.
Plus you have the school department in here also, which wasn't in here before,
Yeah.
when the lot was done.
Well, I mean, you can't have,
Any other questions? Mike, would you have anything to add? Yes, Mike.
Two things about that employee parking. This ordinance actually finally addresses that, where it says that the employees are exempt from the time limit, provided they are parked where they are given an administrative directive to park. So wherever the town manager tells them to park, they're exempt from the time limits if they park there. If they decide to park somewhere else, subject to the same limits as the public if enforcement ends up being done. And to answer Councilor Flockhart's question about the library, the town hall lot currently is the one and only lot in town that has the 1 hour limit versus the 2 hour limit, and that's why that was carried over. I don't know why that was put in place exactly, that predates me, but that's the reason for that existing. And I also just wanted to thank the Rules and Ordinance Committee for finally taking a good look at this, because it finally gives us the opportunity to truly manage these lots, and it may take some growing pains, but I think in the long run, this is gonna help us out tremendously as far as figuring out the time limits in these lots, so thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Counselor DeMarco.
follow-up question, and Mike, this probably needs your expertise. So what you just said was that, you know, anybody working for town hall is exempt if they park where the town manager tells them to park. How the hell do we enforce that? There's no like town sticker, like I work for the town, here you go. Like, how do we enforce
So,
that?
Back in the day, we used to have employee parking permits that kind of went by the wayside. This would be up to the town manager, but there is a provision in the ordinance to go back to issuing employee parking permits. Whether they be stickers, or I personally prefer hangers so people can take them off their car if they don't, people don't really work for town when they work for the town when they're off duty. But it's not just for town hall employees, it's for town employees, so DPW employees who may be using their own cars, the harbor masters, the police department, library employees. whatever.
DPW, yeah. Okay.
Across all municipal lots,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
right, we're not gonna, yeah.
Counselor Munson.
Yeah, just, I think that it's worthy of noting that all of the things that we've decided as, on the rules and ordinance, and that we would be voting upon as a town council, all really are just words on a piece of paper, but it comes down to, the DPW putting signs up, and then from there, getting enforcement to make sure that those actually are implemented. And so we are doing our best to get it regulated, but this is gonna be a process. It's an education too. People aren't gonna know what's going on with CBD and all these municipal lots. So it's gonna be critical to have some kind of signage in each of the lots. So looking forward to seeing it all come to fruition, but I'm sure it'll take a while. And
Anyone else? Counselor Flockhart.
This is a question that probably everybody else in town knows, but since I don't park in the center of town, anybody can park overnight outside of those hours?
If you have a residence sticker, you can stay parked overnight.
In any of these lots?
Yes. Yes.
and streets.
And streets. Yep.
For no more than 72
72 hours.
consecutive hours.
So you can't just, leave your car. Go.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Two other highlights of the municipal lot ordinance that I just wanted to highlight. It addresses the electric charging spots in the Citizens Bank lot. The language states that you can only be parked there if you're actively charging your electric vehicle. That's something that came up in prior discussions on the council as well. So that covers this. If we have more electric vehicles in town at some point, we can look into an electric charging, if we had more chargers in town, we can look into an EV charging station ordinance, maybe separate from this, but this covers the two that we have right now, so I think that's a positive thing. Also, if you need an exception and you're, say, an employee in Winthrop Center, and for some reason you have a hardship and you can't walk from that Walden Street lot that is unlimited parking, and you have to work a 10-hour shift maybe across the CBD. There's also an exception built into this where you can get a special permit potentially to leave your car in one of the closer municipal lots for extended period of time if you have a hardship I think the intention was, you know, a physical hardship if you're on crutches and you can't walk from one end to the other, or whatever have you, it may be, but, you know, just also wanted to throw those key pieces out there as well. I think those are the positive things that are covered.
Anything else on the public hearing? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. We will open up the next public hearing, and that is to transfer $247,775 for water main master plan and long-term capital improvement plan, and that would also come from retained earnings. We will open the public hearing, and this addresses, I know Councilor Aiello has asked for this, and Councilor Honan and other councilors too, to do a more in-depth study of infrastructure needs and wants and desires, and how we were gonna have these all come to fruition. I'll ask the town manager to speak on this a little bit.
Sure. As we talked about before, this is, will be through Woodward and Curran. We get the pricing for that. We're looking forward to getting to work on it. It will give us the long-term capital plan that Councilor Aiello and others have asked for, so we can actually do that, you know, long-term strategic planning for the town, so we know what the water mains are gonna cost. We know, with what you already approved for the Dude Solutions and Brightly, for the, for the facilities needs assessment for all the town buildings and school buildings. This is all gonna be cumulative, and this is just another piece of that plan, so hopefully we get approval, and we're looking forward to get to work on it.
Any questions on this public hearing?
Just-
Councilor Aiello.
Just a comment, great start, it begins to address what we talked about, is
Yep.
understanding the deficit and investment in the infrastructure we have, so thank you.
Well,
Vice President Ruggiero.
So after this motion is potentially passed, there's 1.7 million remaining in the water sewer retained earnings. I have to ask, is that a material impact potentially on water rates moving forward? Or are we gonna have to supplement this if we're taking it out of one place, putting it in another?
Well, I will say that, $250,000 roughly should be put back in from the accounting change that was,
Right.
that
Yeah.
will probably be done in one of the other motions.
Okay.
We are in a, it's all relative, right? We have 44, 45 miles of water main under the streets we've addressed in earnest, and we've been very aggressive and maybe hit 10, 12, 14 miles of it, if that. So there's still, roughly 30-odd miles of very aging infrastructure, so it's all relative, but we're in a much better position than we were in 3 years ago. I think we've learned lessons from previous years where we've used reserves to artificially adjust rates, and I think we understand that now. But I think, again, this is an investment to give us a really good idea of a good plan as to how to address the needs and to prioritize what's needed first. And again, from these two motions, one of the motions hopefully will be replenished at the end of fiscal '23. Anything else on this public hearing? Seeing none, we will close that and move on to the last public hearing, which is our second public hearing concerning the Ordinance Review Committee's recommendations. We could plan on another hearing also. I'm not sure. I will leave this up to the will of the council. Obviously, anyone here could ask any question on any of the recommendations, or we could start literally going through recommendations. I mean, there are many recommendations that are unanimous that I think will probably just be fine. We could look at whichever way you guys would like to handle this. We could look at ones that, had some sort of, even if it's one vote against it coming out of the committee, we could take a look at those. Do we literally want to go through every one, or do we just want to ask some random questions? I will open the floor. Councilor Belcher.
Thank you. I think we should do this in some kind of organized fashion, just to keep from going backwards and repeating conversations. I have no strong feelings about what order that is or anything, but I think we should set out a plan for how to tackle this.
Well, if we're gonna do it in sorry, Councilor Aiello.
Yeah, I agree, we should do it in an organized fashion. I also think it's gonna be likely to be extended discussion.
Yeah, I
so
think it might be
I would
the first
propose-
5 now, and
Yeah, I
you
would
know,
propose,
you're not-
let's set a schedule, we'll do these the first meeting, those the second meeting, those the
or
third
we could go
meeting.
through the ones that were unanimous and kind of check those off and feel better about ourselves that we've accomplished. Because we could be stopped on 1A and not get through this
Yeah,
public hearing.
whichever order you want to do
Um,
them in, but I think, you know, let's think about maybe a 3-meeting period.
Oh, yeah,
So
this is
third,
gonna be
third, and the third,
substantial. Yeah.
And I'm indifferent on
Okay.
which ones we do first, but we ought to come out of this meeting at least with the schedule and which ones we need to
Yep.
pay attention to for the first
That's a good
meeting,
idea.
so.
I agree.
Why
So why don't we get into the meat and start with number 1? And again, if there's questions from the public on any of these right now, or any of the process, please feel free to ask a question. This again will be a process, as Councilor Aiello just said, this is going to go on probably through the month of January. Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Council President Lettieri. I sent you all a letter earlier today in some detail on the individual questions, but just some comments about the process. First of all, I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving, and I'm looking forward to the holidays, I'm sure as you are. Next month is January of 2023. In 2 years, the charter requires another charter committee to be established. So think about that in the sense that this is going to be another process in 2 years that you're going to be starting, and think about what's the need to make some of these changes. I think also there's been some discussion about various people about the role of the council in this, and I would urge you folks, you're the elected body for this town. I see you folks not just participating in this committee and the subcommittees, I see you all around town. So you folks are better informed on what's going on in the town and how town government works than most of the people in the public. So take your role seriously, don't be hesitant. I might disagree with you on some issues, but as one of my favorite presidents, Harry Truman, said, the buck stops here. You folks were elected to make these decisions. If you think something's a good idea, vote for it. If you think it's not a good idea, vote against it, but don't be hesitant. Don't say, well, let's let the public make a decision, because quite frankly, they're not as well informed as you are. So that's basically what I wanted to say. I would agree to some degree that half of these recommendations were 9-0. Maybe those are simple. Some of them there's more controversy. And if there's some divided thought here, 2 years from now, you're going to be back here again. So if you don't think you're not sure it's a good idea, don't vote for it.
Council President?
Thank you. And again, just to let everyone know, Mr. Schmidt made some good points there, and ultimately, this body, which is more knowledgeable, is making a decision on whether it goes to the whole town for a vote, because we do not make the ultimate decision on this. Any decision made on any change will be voted on by everyone in the, will be voted on by the constituents. Councilor DeMarco?
I was just gonna recommend that maybe we take up voting on the ones that were unanimous first, because there are a lot of, dare I say, easy ones in there. And then maybe we take the next 2 weeks and think about the ones that were a little bit more, what's the word? Come on, Joe, give me a word. Contentious, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, there definitely will be a process where we're gonna, and we're not necessarily voting on anything, it's a public hearing, we're not voting during the public hearing, we're just going over ideas, amendments, thoughts, concerns, stuff that isn't in here that people think should be in here, whatever. But yeah, we could go through, and then this way, number, whatever it is, 7, we don't have to talk about again, whatever it happens to be. Vice President Ruggiero?
Just a recommendation, the Rules and Ordinance Subcommittee spent a couple months discussing this and debating it, and we came up with a recommendation that we forwarded to this body. So, it might make sense to start with the Rules and Ordinance recommendation. I'm trying to go back and find it in my email right now. I don't think that was in our package, but that's usually how we handle most ordinance and
And again,
charter
this is a
related
public
things.
hearing, we're just going over
Yep,
any
and that's my
questions,
public
more for the
comments.
public
Yeah.
even than us. I mean, we're gonna have our own internal discussions as we get to a vote. Council, oh,
It's up to you.
Council Munson.
Thank you. I was going to propose that we do what both of my fellow Rules and Ordinance Committee members recommended. I actually think the ordinance changes 1 and 5 were the only contentious ones. If you wanted to actually cover a lot of ground quickly, you do all but those. I do believe the Rules and Ordinance made the differentiation of whether something was an ordinance change or a charter change, and so that it made for quicker work, and we don't need to have it sent to the public for a vote if it's just a rules and ordinance that we can change. So I just think for simplicity's sake, going through in the numerical order -1 and 5, and save a whole meeting for 1 and a separate meeting for 5 would probably suffice, because they create so much debate. But the rest of them are actually no-brainers most of the time. Most of the time.
Vice President Ruggiero, do you agree with that?
I agree that we should review the ordinance, the rules and ordinance recommendations, because we spent a lot of time on that.
Council Aiello.
I agree.
Yeah,
As did the ordinance review
Yeah,
committee,
exactly,
spent
yeah.
6 months doing
Sure,
this. So
absolutely.
We gotta give them their due. And
I'm highly
give them the-
sympathetic to the approach of let the ordinance review committee describe their views and go through their recommendations, and then at the end of that, maybe get a recommendation from rules and ordinance to say, okay, let's at the next meeting, number 1, not today's meeting, but the next meeting, number 1, his recommendation would be, as the chair, to do these X amount, and then the next bunch, and the following amount, the next extra following amount. That would allow the councilors and the public to sort of go through what is a pretty dense package and sort of chew up and be prepared for a discussion.
I think,
around the
you know, that,
ordinance.
valid points. I think we have to go back to the ordinance review committee, did from, over 6 months of work on this, and they've presented to us, and we know where they are, and we know why they believe what they believe. I think what we're gonna do right now is spend 15, 20 minutes or whatever, go through the non-contentious ones as it seems, and we will go back and we will spend an inordinate amount of time, I'm sure, on 1A, 1B, 1C, I think 5A, 7, 8, whatever. There's definitely gonna be some discussion on, and there might be something out, like well, we'll get to it when we get to it. One more question, then we'll go into discussion. Councilor Flockhart.
Whatever process we use, I think because we are on Zoom, we need to spell out not just 1A, but what this is. So somebody needs to read the whole.
Yep. So, we are going to skip over, and we don't have to get into reading it, because it's just, we're skipping over it, 1A, 1B, 1C. We will go to recommendation number 2. Should the abandonment language in section 2.1 be changed from missing more than half of the meetings over a 1-year period to either 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings of the full council, or 2 by failing to appear at 50% of the regularly scheduled meetings for a full council over a period of 3 months. So right now in the charter is very lenient on their requirements for being a councilor. Right now, you have to miss more than 50% of the meetings over a calendar year. So you could basically not show up January through June and then show up in July and you're all set. So this is to take a more realistic look and to say you were elected by the community to serve them, and we think that there should be more stringent requirements. So the recommendation from the Ordinance Review Committee was to strengthen that that abandonment language. So this would move it from 50% over 12 months to either half of the meetings over, to 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings, or failing to appear in 50% of the regularly scheduled meetings over a 3-month period. Any discussion on that? Councilor Belcher.
Thank you. I think this is really strong. Half the meetings in a year, like you mentioned, is potentially 6 months of meetings you're not going to. So I think that this is really strong. It's also worth pointing out that there's an allowance for an exemption if something's going on. So this isn't intended to remove anybody from the council if they're going through a medical situation or anything like that. So it does have space for issues like that, but I think it's a really strong recommendation.
And this was recommended by the Ordinance Review Committee 9-0. Any other discussion on this? Vice President Ruggiero.
I think the way that we participate in meetings has also changed over the course of the past 2 years, so it is easier for folks to be here for the purposes of attendance, whether or not you're physically here or not. So that's something to consider when you're reviewing this. Also, keep in mind as we're going through these, some of the other items that are included here. Maybe this affects, we have to think about how these all play into one another and how we're gonna shape government. You know, if it's a 4-year term or a 2-year term, if there's a recall provision, if there's not a recall provision, I think there are implications on both of those at a minimum, just not recalling all these off the top of my head. But again, just keep that in mind as we go through and try to think about how you wanna frame, you know, government post ORC recommendations.
Any other questions on question 2? All right, so right now I'm gonna make a yes, a no, and a maybe pile, and this is going to go into the yes right now. Again, this is not a vote, you're gonna vote on these separately at a subsequent meeting. Question number 3, should multiple member bodies, example, Board of Licensing, Planning Board, be required to nominate and elect or re-elect a chairperson as a first order of business in the first meeting at the start of the fiscal year? This again was voted 9-0. And this was brought up, there have been instances in the past where a council president was appointing a chairperson. We feel that the ORC feels that this should be done by the body. My only amendment would be to this, would be to say that there also should be an election of a co-chair. And that has been an issue recently where there wasn't a co-chair and we lost the chair, so, you know, we had to make arrangements. But other than that, I think multiple member body boards. Now, I don't know if this was discussed as policy-making boards.
They're defined, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I'm asking Vice President Ruggiero.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, they're defined within the charter. It's the planning board, the zoning board, the board of license, board of health, and board of library trustees.
Right.
Those are,
So those would be the bodies affected,
Yeah,
and I
so-
believe, I give my recommendation, I firmly believe and would go along with this. I would just say that we kind of require a co-chair as well. Well, we'll ask Mr. Smith, since he's the chairman of the Board of Health.
Yeah, so I mentioned this when we had the committee handbook the other day. State law requires us, the Board of Health, to elect somebody the first meeting of the year. So I think you were talking about with language that said, except unless it's,
Well,
state
this
law-
says the first meeting of the fiscal year, which
Right.
would be July. Would you rather it be January of the calendar year?
No, I'm just saying, no, I think the point was made in the committee that if you can have a lot of people's terms start, beginning of the fiscal year, that it made sense for a lot of boards. I was just saying
Right.
that there may be exceptions that, like the Board of Health, that you might want to just include language unless state law requires some other date. The other point is, we as a Board of Health, we elect a vice chair.
Right, and that's what I think that should be included in this, because there are other member.
A vice chair, I would say.
Okay, so there are other bodies that have not elected a vice chair, and I think that is important. So are we suggesting a verbiage change in the fiscal year to?
so the language that I have in front of me says the first order of business after July 1st of each year. Is that the language that you have?
That's what I have, but,
Okay.
or we could say unless otherwise
Specified
required by the
law.
state law.
I think that's right, because to Mr. Schmidt's point, the Board of Health is governed by a whole separate set of rules, as I'm assuming a few of these other ones, so probably something good to point out.
And add a vice chair. Councilor Flockhart?
Perhaps Councilor Belcher was gonna raise this, but
Council- oh.
this came up in the handbook as well. And Councilor
Oh,
Belcher
that's what
may
we were talking
remember
about.
better
Yes,
than
yeah,
I.
that's
The
the
handbook
wording.
discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at a risk of it being like a spoiler, this is a recommendation we made for the committee handbook. And we did put in language like that about it may be superseded by either the charter or mass general law, so I think it's good to also have that language in here. So if people are going up the chain to see if they need to have one.
Council Munson?
When you guys are proposing that a vice chair be elected as well, is that also in line with this recommendation, which is for the
Yes.
the body, the committee to
Be
actually?
elected by the body.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that makes sense to me too.
All right, so we're going, anybody else? We're gonna put question 3 in the yes, with a couple of minor amendments to the language. Recommendation number 4. Should ordinance chapter 17, section 52, paragraph 30, which currently permits use variances, be changed to disallow use variances? Now, this was a 8-to-1 recommendation. Vice President Ruggiero, you feel comfortable talking about this?
Yeah, so we, in the subcommittee, the motion that we passed recommended that, it was that we positively recommended it for further investigation and opinion by the town manager and legal. Just because there are some, I think, legal implications that are above our payroll on this one, but I think on the surface, this seemed palatable to both the ORC and the subcommittee. I can speak in generalities, but this is not my strong suit by any means, but right now, if something is zoned as residential A, like, you know, any home, like a single-family home, and you go to sell that, all you would need to do to put, you know, a convenience store on the first floor and build up a couple stories is to get a use variance from the zoning board of appeals. So you would apply for a permit would get denied, it would go to the zoning board of appeals, and they would grant you a use variance. That body alone. By removing the use variance, we believe there is another method through Mass General Law where you would go to the planning board, and then ultimately the council would make the decision on whether or not to change the zoning to allow for a project to go through. I believe that's how it's done. And, well, from what we talked about in the ORC, there are only 11 communities in the Commonwealth out of the 351 that have a use variance, and we're one of them. So that kind of sparked the discussion and why we have it in the first place. I think there are pros and cons to it. The pros are that, you know, the planning board gets an opinion on this potentially. The elected officials get an opinion on what's happening in the neighborhoods. It still may also need to go through the zoning board of appeals. You know, if you're looking for a setback, or if you're looking for, you know, another type of variance from our ordinances, that would still be heard through the board of appeals. So you're really getting 3 bodies: the planning board, the council, and the zoning board, in order to make any substantial changes. I think the cons are, you know, maybe we're not the best group of folks to be deciding these things. You know, when you have elected officials determining development projects, I know in a lot of other communities that isn't necessarily, you know, sometimes it's worked out, sometimes it hasn't. But I think there's a whole set of risks that lie there as well. So that's my, in a nutshell, pros and cons here.
Town manager, do you have anything to add on this specific?
Yeah, and we haven't really had a chance to talk
No.
about this. We definitely need town manager and legal input on it. It's my personal opinion.
No, I agree. I mean, the professionals, so to speak, that were in the room have very strong feelings on this too, that we disallow the use variance, and we are one of a select few communities that allow it right now. But I think this, I don't have a problem with this, but as a layperson, I don't have a problem with it, but I think it needs to go through just a little bit more, not necessarily by us. I think we kind of agree with the recommendation, assuming the powers to be agree with the recommendation.
Just real quick
Yes,
before we
Vice
turn to the town manager, I'm sorry, but just to be clear, this is the only ordinance change that came out of the ORC. This will not go to the public, this will not go to the state. This is something that we can handle
Internally.
internally as a council with no sort of timeline, so that's why we didn't wanna, jump too quickly in this one, so I'm sorry, but.
No, it's fine. I've worked in two communities, one had the use variance, one didn't. The thought process for not having it is that you change your zoning, right? Just like you said, you make the zoning changes. The fear in that and what you've seen happen and what other communities have done is it's called spot zoning, right? You end up zoning just one section because we want this one thing, and some people don't like that, and there's certainly case law around that and all that. But the pros to it is my opinion is, now if you've got a solid master plan and you have a community and you know where you want to go and this is the goals of the community, changing the zoning can work to your favor, and it doesn't allow one board's membership at any given time to allow a use variance, because there's 4 criteria to give any sort of a variance, and I've seen it misused so many times by ZBAs over the years. Like, you can never hit that undue hardship, right? And what's the undue hardship for a swimming pool? What's the undue hardship for whatever? And then nobody can ever hit that criteria. It's never challenged, but it certainly can be. So I would say, not having the use variance and doing it through zoning is probably, my opinion, would be the better way to go.
All right, so we are going to put this in a category where we're going to get more information on the options, and I kind of agree with it as written, but we will get more clarification on that. We will not go through question 5 at this stage. Question 6, should the charter be amended that if there is a dispute between the charter and the council rules, the charter is binding? This is pretty basic and simple, and this is a 9-0 vote from the ORC. Any questions on this?
Agree 100%.
All right, we're gonna move on to question 7. Should the filling of vacancy language on the school committee, housing authority, and board of library trustees as set forth in Charter Section 5.1 be amended to mirror the vacancy process of the town council? This was voted 6-3 in favor on the ORC, and I will just state for the public too that, for example, why this I think becomes an issue, or at least thought to be an issue, is, for example, recently we had a vacancy on the housing authority. So there's 9 members of the council. There are 5 members of the housing authority. So if there's a vacancy, there's 4 members of the housing authority. And as it's written now, it's a joint meeting between the 2 bodies. So technically, the 9 members of the council are really appointing the person on the housing authority. The thought is, should there not be much more emphasis put on the housing authority, since that's what they do, shouldn't they have more power to pick their replacement? On the basis of it, and this has happened at the school committee also, where there's technically 6 members and 1 being the council president, and it's 9, and again, if you're filling 1, there's only 5. And that's happened on that. It seems like, to me, it seems like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Now, my only question on this is, I have been told that technically the highest ranking member, elected body, is supposed to be represented on these vacancies. I don't know if that's a rule, and I was told this by one of our founding fathers, so to speak, and a man I have a ton of respect for. So, and I'm not going to put him on the spot. Obviously, he's not here now, but I've had this conversation in the past, saying, "Geez, this seems like an easy thing. Why shouldn't these bodies be able to pick their own replacements?" That's the only thought I have, is just to make sure that there's nothing that says the highest ranking of elected body needs to be involved in this decision-making process. But I will open it up. Councilor Honan.
What was the rules and ordinance recommendation on this one?
3-0 approved.
It was to go forward with it. I think the stipulation was getting as much information on these while we can, right? Like right now. So the ORC did its due diligence. We did as much due diligence as we could have. But again, all of these are changing, the fabric of our town. So if there's anything that the council president had referenced, we should know that, and I think. that-
Right, that's the only, I think, again, I think this is relatively simple on the surface to say, why shouldn't these, but I would just like to make sure that there's a reason why it wasn't written like this. Councilor Flockhart first, and then
Okay.
Onan, and
It does not distinguish between elected bodies and appointed bodies, does it? And the school committee, for instance, is an elected body. And the council overrode what the school committee wanted last time they had a vacancy. But you're talking about the housing,
these are all elected bodies.
they're all elected?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why, again, I was told that the highest elected bodies are supposed to be involved.
Yeah.
Because to me, on the surface, we have the largest number, so we basically say who's gonna, if we're involved in the process, we're picking the person, which to me, why shouldn't the school committee pick their own people? Why shouldn't the housing authority pick their own people? Why shouldn't the library trustees pick their own people? I just wanna make sure it's legal, so to speak.
Yeah.
Councilor Belcher?
I agree with this. I think that it makes more sense for the body to elect their own or select their own people. But I think that the spirit of it was that the council, as the elected people representing the whole town, are taking the place of a town election. But I still think it kind of outweighs it, and there's more benefit to the body picking their own people.
Councilor
So
Aiello?
just for clarification, you're gonna get it
I think we'll get an opinion, but again, that's all you do, because I think it seems like a pretty simple thing, but there is a thought, like Councilor Belcher said, that this is kind of giving the community a chance. Now, these are just filling of positions, right? These are just filling them until their term expires. It's not giving them a new 4-year term or 2-year term or whatever the length of the term is. Councilor Munson?
A, just for clarity's sake, why does it keep on referring in the recommended language and in the previous language, school committee and board of library trustees, and not the housing authority included? Well, shouldn't that be added?
The housing authority is included.
I don't see it, it's in the first sentence.
It's included in the charter, but not in there is like a discrepancy. I remember looking at it, and I think we wanted to see if there was MGL that dictated anything about housing authority, right?
I
If I'm
believe
remembering
that's
correctly.
the case, yeah, that.
I believe it was
the
any
housing
elected,
authority
right?
is,
Yeah.
covered under Mass General Law, so, I think that's something that we should have cleared up as well, whether or not that should be included in here or not.
And that might be the one that's requiring
The
us to
council,
vote,
yeah.
right? So that's why we just need some legal clarification. Other than that, you
Again,
know.
yeah, and, I am not sure of, if KP has seen these recommendations and has weighed in on them. Maybe before we do anything, I think it's a good idea to get KP's eyes on these once more before anything is finalized. But,
Right, that was the.
just to Council Belcher's point, I believe we had a representative from the Collins Center here when we were first debating some of these, and I think that was her rationale for why the council was involved, because we would be taking the place of the public as the elected body of the entire town. So that's the counter to the other points.
All right, so we're gonna put that, we seem to be at least 2/3 in consensus, but we just wanna get a legal opinion on that. Question 8, and this is more of a recommendation than a charter change. Should the ORC makes a recommendation to the town council in favor of the formation of a water sewer advisory committee. This was voted 7-2 in favor of the recommendation. And this is, again, more of it's not a charter change. It's from conversations that came out of the ORC. They think in light of all the stuff that's happened over the last multiple years and people's thoughts on water and so on, this and that there should be an advisory committee. So that's something that we can do as a council if so desired. But they were, heavily in favor. Councilor, Vice President Ruggiero.
Thank you. Yeah, so these are, like Council President Terry said, this is kind of in that other category. We bucketed these in our subcommittee between charter, ordinance, and other, and this is one of the others. But I think the discussion that occurred in the ORC was that, you know, at least in my time paying attention to town government, the water rate, that entire process has been one of the most, if not the most, heavily scrutinized things in town government. We've had local, regional news covering our water rates. We've had audits, we've had discussions here, we've had protests at Ingleside Park about the water rates. So I think this is the ORC kind of hearing all that and asking the council to put sort of this check in place.
Council Belcher.
Thank you. I'm hugely in support of this. I think that this does a lot by way of saying that we as a council recognize the need to pay attention to this consistently and not just when the rates go out or the bills go out, when it comes up and it's in front of us. I think that it would benefit the ratepayers to have people paying close attention to us, to this, that are knowledgeable and can kind of just keep an eye on it. I think it's important enough to have a dedicated advisory committee for it.
Council Honan.
You mentioned the ORC voted 7-2. What was the Rules and Ordinance Committee vote?
I believe it was unanimous.
It was 3-0, I believe. Yes, it was.
Councilor Munson.
Council President, do you know off the top of your head in terms of percentage what the water sewer represents as a total part of the budget?
It's about 10, 7 to 8%.
8%. And so while there's an advisory committee to the finance, there's an advisory committee to the school, in a sense. I think that being that it's such a large part of the budget, it just makes sense to follow suit with that, just to have some oversight from community specialists that volunteer for the position that are also being appointed or elected. They're not elected, but they may be elected amongst their own peers to be the chair. But this is an important position and for an important budget, important part. So it's just basically, and there's some great people here. I've met a few people that do this for a living all over the world and would be a huge asset to this town to keep an eye on and make some recommendations.
And just for clarity, there's not an advisory committee from the council on the schools.
It's not advisory. In a sense, there's an oversight committee with the school committee.
The school committee, yes, but not, the council has nothing to do with that.
No.
Councilor DeMarco.
When it comes to water and sewer, I don't think there's anybody on this council who hasn't been asked why the heck are our water bills so high. You know, we had an audit that was done, and, you know, there's a learning curve on the council too, so I assumed that we were gonna get recommendations on how we could bring people's costs down. That didn't happen in that meeting. In fact, it was just, this is why your bills are this high. This is things you can do. And I'm like, well, will that bring the bill down? And he was like, no, it won't do that. And what I was hoping to get out of that was, how do we bring the cost for Winthrop residents down? Because honestly, we don't care why our rates are so high. We just want to know how to bring them down, right? I think everybody agrees with that. So, I mean, this might not do anything in the long run. It might not. But you know what? We're doing something. You know what? We need advice. We need an advisory committee. This is what we can do to help the situation. And I don't see why there should be any negative thought about this. This is just a group of citizens coming together and finding ways to help us financially when it comes to water and sewer. That's it. That's the only reason. I think this is a no-brainer.
Vice President Ruggiero.
This is also a carryover from the prior ORC. We discussed that in the prior ORC that back when we had a select board instead of a town council, there was a water commission that was comprised of people from the public who then advised the select board what the water rate should be. So there was some discussion in the prior ORC that should be brought back. We talked about it a little bit in the current ORC. And this is sort of where we landed. I think really what this does is it brings the public into town hall to get a better understanding of the decision-making process surrounding setting the rates. We can, I mean, and, you know, we can set the mission. I think, you know, this one's with the council, so if we, you know, I think we can go in a lot of different directions about this, not so much nuts and bolts, but also, you know, kind of setting that mission out and being more of a communication branch of town government. You know, what to do if you see a water leak, like these types of things. How can I lower my bill? Why is the rate so high? I think there are folks that are passionate about this, so we should try to get them involved if we can.
And just for clarification too, the charter states that the town manager, which
Will ultimately, yes.
ultimately is making it's not the council that's setting the water rates, it's the town manager is the setting the water rates, he's the water or he or she is the water commissioner.
And that wouldn't change under this recommendation. It's
No,
just-
this is
yep,
not,
yep.
it's not a policy-making board, it's an advisory board potentially. And I will ask now, it's been a half hour, I mean, we're gonna have multiple more meetings, we can keep going for another, or we could move the meeting.
I
I think-
recommend we move.
Okay, so we're gonna stop at question 8. We're going to have another, probably the first meeting in January, we will have another, keep this on, Denise, for another public hearing. And hopefully take 2 more meetings, probably of public hearings to get through.
So we're continuing this public hearing.
We are going to continue this public hearing. Public comment. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, President Lettieri. I just want to make one comment if I wasn't clear. I was suggesting that.
Just for the, Bill Schmidt.
Bill Schmidt,
please speak.
precinct 5.
Thank you.
Sorry. I didn't want it to be interpreted that the public wouldn't have a role in this, but I think there was some feeling among some members of the ordinance review committee that you should just pass whatever they pass directly to voters without having your input. So my point was, I think you folks are in the correct position to be able to make those choices. The other thing, just on the other boards in terms of filling vacancy, I know the Housing Authority, 1 member is appointed by the governor, and they changed the process.
One
to
member
make-
is a resident.
To make one a resident of one of the housing, so it is a little different. I would suggest, however, that I've been here for a few times when vacancies have been filled, and it's never been a unanimous situation when, for instance, all the members of the school committee and all the members of the council agree. There's quite a lot of differences, so I don't think that's necessarily that you folks should feel that you don't have a proper role, particularly compared to the Housing Authority and the library trustees, which are not as visible as the school committee and you folks. I mean, we know who you are, we elect you, people approach you, they can talk about, people really don't know, I would say, largely in this town, who's on the library trustees, their meetings on Zoom, et cetera, so just think about that. One other point if I could make is there's an item here later on in the new business about increasing the COLA base for Winthrop retirees. I think that's a great idea. I'm a state retiree. I get the newsletter from the Mass Retirees Association. Winthrop's like one of about 10 or 12 communities in the state that is still at 12,000. There are a lot of other communities that are 13, 14, 15, 16, even up to 18,000. So I think you should do that. The town employees, they worked hard. It's a little bit of money, I think would make a difference.
Thank you. And I will just say on the Housing Authority, the last vacancy we filled as a joint group was specifically that member who is from the Housing Authority. Now, there were 2 members that lived in the authority that won, so there was a decision to be made, but you're right, it's not a completely voted on by the public board. Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Council President. This will only take about 5 minutes.
Okay, well, you only have 3, but, and your name, and we won't even count this as part of your 3, but
Thank you,
just
You're too kind.
Jack Dowd.
Jack Dowd, Precinct 1.
Thank you.
I've been anticipating reading this article that was in the transcript this past week for about 120 years, it seems. So I'm going to read it. It'll only take 30 seconds to read this. 120 years ago, December 12, 1902, Winthrop's first park, to be known as Ingleside Park, will soon become a reality. The Winthrop Park Commissioners received a deed from Mrs. Ingalls and others for about 10 acres of land. The town has appropriated $8,000 for improvements to the former marsh area. The park will be named in honor of Samuel Ingalls, who was the founder of the summer settlement at Ocean Spray and who was a great benefactor to the town for so many years. That's the first of three things that I want to bring to light. Now that we're coming into a new year, 2023, with anticipated play at the school site, I want everybody to be aware of that 120-year-old donation. And then there's more good news for a lot of people. On November 17th, 2022, a couple of weeks ago, Charlie Baker signed into law an act preserving open space in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. PLPA, Public Lands Preservation Act. The coalition of local, regional, and national land conservation and environmental organization has made history in this state. So it's a combined effort by a lot of people throughout the whole country to preserve open space. We need it. We need greenery in this town, of course, because of the airport. I hope everybody takes that into consideration ongoing in the year 2023. This act by Governor Baker adds to the already existing Article 97 Disposition Act of 1972, protecting all open space. This includes the green area and trees on Revere Street. So if this process wants to go forward, you have to abide by Charlie Baker and the Act of 1972, the Article 97 Preservation Act, Disposition of Land, excuse me, in order to go on with this process, this TIPS process of redoing that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you did a 3 minutes, Jeff.
Really?
Yeah.
Any other public comment? Seeing none. Correspondence. Denise?
We did get one letter from Shannon Poulos, who was concerned with the TIPS project on Revere Street on the bike sharrows and on the tree cutting downs.
Thank you.
Didn't we also get tons of letters on this ESP professional?
Yes, we did.
Only hundreds.
Geez, like hundreds.
100 plus.
You didn't get one? They didn't send it to you?
Oh.
Oh, who sent it to
I
you?
got
We all
barrage.
did. We were getting
The
lots.
record should show,
Oh,
Yeah.
it's gotta be over 100, right?
Yeah.
Definitely,
The boilerplate letter.
I didn't get
It's the
it.
same letter, yeah, for the most part.
yeah.
More or
Yeah, it's
less.
the same letter, I think.
Supporting
from-
the-
Okay.
Yeah, I read a few.
We hear you.
Small.
We definitely heard you.
They can send all the letters they want, they don't send them to you.
Right.
That's what people.
Yeah, but,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we should
No,
bring
this
it up.
one's good.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm assuming we talked about-
Committee reports. Finance, Counselor Fusillo.
Yeah, we met before this meeting. We had a couple of things on the agenda. We covered all three motions that we covered, which we'll get into a little later. Were passed with well, not passed, but given unanimous positive recommendations. We'll cover those, I believe, in old business.
We will. Thank you. Vice President Ruggiero, rules and ordinance.
Yeah, Rules and Ordinance met last week to discuss the municipal lot ordinance that we just went over in extreme detail. But if there are any questions, we can recap that. But productive meeting, and the mission was accomplished in getting that in front of the council tonight.
And we will do that in old business. Appointments, commissions, and committees.
That committee also met last week. It was our second meeting on the committee handbook. We discussed, we started going through again section by section. Councilor Belcher served as our record keeper of all of the notes and comments that we had discussed. We were lucky enough to have two chair people of other volunteer boards in the room with us from the public, so that was also nice having that input, and we welcome that in any future meetings we have on this topic. I think our strategy moving forward with this is, well, we passed a motion among the committee members that Councilor Belcher was gonna make the updates to the draft as we had discussed, and then circulate that to both the town manager and the council clerk, to get feedback on some of the more technical aspects of the handbook. There might be some legal items that we want just addressed as well. Maybe updating anything that needs to be updated. I think for example, the sexual harassment policy that's currently in the handbooks from 2019, so if there's an updated one, that might be something that we want to include, and obviously the refreshed version of this handbook. But once we receive feedback from the administration, the plan would be to then pass something out of our subcommittee to then go back to the committee chairs of our volunteer boards, because they're the ones that are gonna have to work with this handbook on a more direct basis, get feedback from them, and then bring something back to the council. So it's a little bit long of a process than I think we had anticipated, but we want to do it the right way. We want to make sure we have the appropriate feedback from the committee chairs, and we want that to be an inclusive process of all of those people that work so hard, honestly, and volunteer, and we don't necessarily talk about it, but that's where we are on that, and we'll have another meeting once we get feedback from the administration.
Thank you. School department report, the school committee, we met last evening. We did have a excellent presentation by Andrea O'Leary, who's the principal of the Arthur T. Cummings School. She talked a lot about programs, math programs, class sizes in terms of overall class sizes, while the individual class sizes remain at a really good number. The overall class sizes are pretty big right now, and but she talked a little bit about that. We also had some great news. I think there were 30-odd students from Winthrop that will be awarded the Abigail Adams Scholarship, and we will have them at a school committee, I believe the first school committee meeting in January. And the Abigail Adams Scholarship is tuition credits to a state university for achieving MCAS results with at least one advanced section and at least in the other being proficient. This is a very good quantity of a group that had achieved that this year, and very proud of them. And again, we will be honoring them at our first meeting in January on the school committee. And at that point, at our first meeting, I would like to do a similar honor at our council meeting. Town managers report.
Just a quick.
Sure.
Just with respect to the letter that we got about the education support professionals.
The ESPs.
Indicated that there were no longer any negotiations going on with respect to trying to improve their wage rates. Did they provide an update on that to you?
They did not provide an update on that. I'm sure that that's still in committee. I have heard similar comments. My understanding is that it, could be going to into a different process now. And I think that that's still in committee, that we did not discuss it at all at the meeting. I do believe that there was an additional bargaining committee that did settle. The school has 7 bargaining committees, right? And it's not just, everybody thinks the schools and they think of the teachers, but there's multiple, as you well know, there's multiple sections in each. And the ESPs is as they all are, incredibly important in what they do for our students and for our staff and everybody else. It's very much needed and very much appreciated, but they're still in bargaining, so I really don't have an update on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Town managers report.
Thanks. Thank you, Council President. I just want to update quick. I know it's been on the minds of Councilmember Aiello and others. Capital plan is en route. We are sending out these forms this week to all the department heads. We've got a smaller capital plan that was formed by our facilities department, but we're going to do a more in-depth one this year. Part of that will be the facilities needs assessment once it's done, but before that happens, we're required per the charter, to supply the capital plan by March 1st, which will be the 120 days before the end of the fiscal year.
Which would be the first time since the charter was apparently, according to this,
Well,
that we're
that's gonna happen this
submitting it
year.
on time, right?
So these will go out to the department heads, we'll get the list in. This is a project detail sheet, it basically lists the project title, what they need for their department, gives them a description and justification section, a photo of whether it's a piece of equipment or a section of a building that needs to be repaired, and it also down below lists, where they wanna grab the funding from, whether it's free cash or, do they need money for feasibility study design, so this really allows us to get into the details of each individual request. The other pieces that'll flow into is what will be the 5-year capital plan. This is a similar format that I've used in the past, nothing in here yet, but we'll have projects in here. It'll lay out the 5 years. One of the tabs at the end there is a funding tab. It'll lead, whether it's general fund, whether we're grabbing money from green communities, is it from waterways, is it from, bonds, or, whether we're gonna go out and get grants, things like that. So it really will be a detailed plan once you see it. We should have this together by, early January, so I know there's a CIP committee or a capital assets committee. I'd probably recommend we do 1 or 2 meetings with them. We can have them, open to the public, bring it in, talk about the plan, get input from the committee. Do we wanna fine tune it? Do we wanna add anything that we might have missed? Things like that. So that's sort of the process for capital, all in anticipation of supplying that capital plan to the committee, to the council on or before March 1st.
If I could?
Yes.
Tony's doing an absolutely terrific job on this stuff. It's really great, it's very refreshing. I think the public is gonna have an ability to, at the end of this, see that why it's important to have a capital plan, what a capital plan's all about. It's all about choices, it's all about leveraging the dollars that we do have, trying to secure money from the outside, et cetera. So it's gonna be a very important document for them. And I think the 2 sessions that we're looking to have in January, maybe early February, will go a long way to sort of provide some additional input for those who sort of have questions about it. But
Right.
this is terrific. I'm really excited.
And the thought process would be too, is as we get a draft version done, whether it's January or February, we'll get it to the council as well. Maybe bring it up during my town manager report, we can take a look at it then and sort of, so it's not, you're getting it all on March 1st, you'll actually see it in sections, so. And again, I want us it'll look a little different when we start out versus when we get the facilities needs assessment in, because that's gonna give us more data and more information, and then it'll be a more complete plan at that point.
And one great thing about actually hitting the mark in March is that we'll have the whole month of March to finalize and approve the capital improvement plan, and that means when the operating budget comes in the beginning of April, we actually have less to do because we're not simultaneously trying to do both things at the same time. So this will also help with the workload of the council and the staff, so
Yep.
thanks.
Thank you. And on that note, we did have our kickoff meeting. Steve Caller, Rich Sifuni, and I had our meeting with Brightly, formerly School Dude. They're gonna be starting the facility needs assessment. They're gonna kick off, they need some information with us, fine tune the list, what do we wanna call the buildings when we enter them in the system, et cetera. And then they'll be sending a company out to start doing the deep dive in the buildings and walking around with Rich and looking at all the equipment, tagging it, and really getting into the nuts and bolts of all of our buildings and see what our long-term plans are, so. We do have a draft, thanks to Council Ruggiero and Honan on that. We have a draft of a trash policy. We're kind of finalizing that right now, but I'll get that out to the council in the hopefully before the end of the week, for the take a look at, review, and then we can bring that up at a future meeting to kick that around so we can get some traction on that. And with that, also the trash bills will be, for the $160 per year, will be going out in January. We waited a little bit this year because we wanted to get an accurate list from the assessor's office, because all of the data gets updated in December. So now we'll have an actual, all the property sales will be in. We'll actually have a good list of solid, homeowners, and that list will be more accurate than the one we had last year, and that's why we waited till January to send that out. So those will be coming out mid-January, so keep an eye out for those. I talked at the last meeting via Zoom about the legal bids. We got 5 bids in based on the RFP we sent out, so I'm in the process of reviewing those now. Happy with the results. Obviously KP put one in, a few other law firms I'm familiar with, and then a few that I'm not, so we're gonna review those and do the deep dive, and some creative things came forward. One recommendation was for in-house town council. One recommendation was for like a package plan where we pay so much per month and other alternatives, so it really might provide some cost savings for the residents, so we'll see, but there was, a lot of creativity there, so we're happy with that. We are working on the cable contract renewal with Comcast. We're a little out right now, but we're moving forward with that. We're still getting our funds in for, WCAT, but We're working with my hired attorney, Bill Solomon, who does, basically he's known for the cable contracts around the Commonwealth, and he does a great job on them. I've worked with him in the past. And he's working with Mike Cavall over at WCAT to create a capital list and, get that in front of Comcast. So that's moving forward as well. CFO position, we have that job position closed. We had 3 really strong resumes come forward that were reviewed by Community Paradigm and John Petrin, and we've got interviews with Lisa Howard and I next week for Tuesday afternoon with those 3 candidates. So I'm moving forward on that. And last but certainly not least, because I'm sure there'll be questions, is we do have the ferry down up in Newburyport being repaired. When all said and done, we will have 2 new engines and 2 new transmissions in the ferry and ready to kick off. We will luckily, with all the supply chain stuff, we were very fortunate to get 2 new Cummins diesel engines available to us, and we procured them and got them in place. So it'll be about $100,000. We've got the money, so it's okay, but should be ready to roll for March to kick off the new season. So, and that's all I have. And open to questions.
I will say, I had asked DPW Director Steve Calla to put a blue light, like a flashing blue light for snow emergencies down at Delby's Corner a couple months back, and Steve was right on top of it, and that light is installed, and I thank you very much for doing that. It really helps the residents of the point, makes them more aware of snow emergencies as they occur. And
If I could jump in on that too, I just want
Yes.
to thank the DPW, Steve and his crew for setting the tree, putting up the tree for the tree lighting ceremony. They did a great job on that. Event went out. I make sure not to schedule my vacation next year for that time frame, but and I'll be there. But yeah, it was a great event. And I want to just thank them for all their efforts.
And
The tree
that was
great.
done, kind of last minute type deal, and I just want to let the community know that I've talked to Tony about this, that next year the plan is that we have it as a giving tree, and we'll be able to have residents buy ornaments and memory ornaments and such that we'll be able to put on the tree.
And try to fundraise, yeah.
Yes, as a fundraiser for different activities, but, so we do have a plan for next year as well, but and Betsy's got some kudos already tonight, but she did, and the Chamber and the Winthrop Foundation did an incredible job. There were more people there than I've seen over the past 20 years, and, we haven't had it the last 2, but it was well-run, well-organized. The center looked great. Thank you, Steve. And on to a new year pretty soon.
Yeah.
Council President?
Yes, Councilor Munson.
Do you mind if I ask
No,
just
I do
quickly
not
one
mind.
thing? Councilor DeMarco brought something up that I really liked, and I would actually second it if he made a motion, but what would be cool, or not cool, but great for the town would be to have an update on the old middle school site on every town manager's report. Would you be open to that?
Sure. Some of the stuff we, whether it's taking it down or, we demolish, certainly the council has talked about that. But sure, we can give an update. We have in the final process of securing some engineering so we can get the actual lots laid out and get the points done and get an actual site plan of the site. And then we can talk about the Chapter 97, any sort of issues we have to do with that and apply to the legislature if that's the way we decide to go. Do we want to keep the gym, not keep the gym, all sorts of things that I need some decisions before I can move forward too much, but on this end, we certainly are laying it out so we can have a proper site plan where the building sits, where the Chapter 97 land, all that stuff, so.
I'd be curious to know
The parkland.
if Mr. Dowd's comments about Governor Baker's land conservation open space legislation, would it impact our ability to do anything that we're doing at the old middle school? But this, to be discussed.
Down the road, all depends what you want to do, right? And then, there's certainly a process to take it out, but you gotta go through, you gotta check all the boxes, and I'd have to read through all the legislation. I haven't read the law exactly that was passed, so I wouldn't have a full, deep dive as to what sort of impact that would have on us.
We'll
Yeah.
try to help. I will try to help as much as possible to get that moving. Thank you.
Thank you. There has not been a meeting from Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, so that will maintain on the agenda, as it always will. Old business, as the town manager just stipulated, we will have a trash policy in front of the council, hopefully by the end of this week, but definitely before the next meeting, and given everybody ample time to take a look at it, and then we can move forward with that. Vice President Ruggiero, Center Business Signage.
Sure, so, like we've talked about, a motion was passed out of rules and ordinance. It has been circulated to the council. We discussed the nuts and bolts of it earlier. I would appreciate a motion to waive the reading.
Motion by Counselor Aiello, second by Counselor DeMarco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Okay.
Continue.
And with that, the Rules and Ordinance Subcommittee hereby moves the Center Business District parking motion that was previously circulated. So if there's any questions or comments on it, we can definitely talk about them if we want
There's
to
a
see them
motion coming
happen.
out of committee, does not require a second. It is open up for discussion. And not that, not that this has not been discussed in length at an inordinate amount of subcommittee meetings and such. This is not something that's just coming before us and being voted on. This has had a lot of public comment, Zoom meetings, in-person meetings, all kinds of meetings, so this is not something that the committee has taken lightly in any way, shape, or form.
And I'll just add, to keep, just to keep talking about it, but there were parking restrictions down the center prior to the construction. I think, some of us forget that. So we're kind of putting things back in place the way they were, at least as far as the ordinances are concerned. So we're putting things back in place the way they were, and we're taking into account the MAPC recommendation that was provided to us. So those are the two big pieces here that I just wanted to reiterate for everyone.
Well, and we took the time to look at the ordinances, and the ordinances were changed, including a lot more parking. You know, there has been spaces lost, but there were spaces that were not maybe properly utilized, but through the ordinances, we tried to do, the committee tried to do which was best. And for example, there was no parking on Somerset Street per the ordinance. There was no parking on one side of Woodside from CVS into Sweat's Liquors on that side of the street per the ordinance. So they really took the time and did a deep dive and really tried to make this ordinance not only usable, but correct. So we thank them for their time in this. And we thank Mike DeLuise if he's not on there, but just in general, because he's been an immense help, I'm sure, to the Vice President.
Absolutely.
You need a motion to approve?
Nope, there's a motion, it does not need to be seconded, coming out of committee without, with positive recommendation. There has been discussion, seeing no more, I will ask for I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Counsel Honan?
Yes.
Counsel Munson?
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo?
Yes.
Counsel Belcher?
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco?
Yes.
Counsel Flockhart?
Yes.
Counsel Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes. And we will go back to the Vice President for municipal lots.
Again, would appreciate a motion to waive the reading.
Motion by Counselor Aiello, second by Counselor DeMarco. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Vice
So,
President.
again, this is coupled with the CBD parking motion that we just passed, but it affects all municipal lots in town. We'd never had a municipal lot ordinance before. This puts some rules and restrictions and guidelines around those lots. It's all detailed in here. Again, this helps solve the problem of what do I do if I need to be parked in Winthrop Center for longer than 2 hours? This answers that question. You can now go in the municipal lots for up to 4 hours in the center business area, and some even longer, so. But while we're at it, we took care of most other, if not all of, no, I believe all of the other municipal lots in town, so.
Can you just define for the public too, the municipal lots within the center and
Sure, yeah, so we're looking at the Hagman extension behind,
kind of behind Hong
Occidental,
Kong?
La
and
Siesta, Hong Kong, and in
and
front of
next
the
to
Viking
Cafe
Pub.
Delight and Viking Pub.
The Citizens Bank lot, as it's commonly called, in between Citizens and in between Putnam and Hagman. There's the lot that's directly in front of Larson Rink, and there's the lot that is in front of the gym.
Gymnasium.
Those are two separate lots for the purposes of this ordinance, just for, in case anything in the future happens with either of those
Facilities.
sections. Yeah, facilities. And then we're also calling the lot at the corner of Walden and Pauline a CBD parking lot for this purpose as well.
At the bottom of the E.B. Newton School.
Correct, at the bottom of the E.B. Newton, across the street from the rink across Walden. those are the, I guess, CBD municipal lots, but there are plenty other in towns. There's some in Grover, there's one on Grover's Ave, there's one at Dolby's Corner, and there's one
George Street.
George Street, exactly. The landing is considered public lot. Town Hall back there.
And this will all be on the website.
All will all be posted to the website. Okay.
So, so you're coming out with a positive recommendation on that, correct? So, there is a motion out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Discussion, Councilor Honan.
Just one question, so, apologize if you've gone over this. So the parking lot behind the banks, behind Rockport and, Rockland Trust and Bank of America, not a municipal lot?
That is not a municipal lot. That is privately owned land. Michael's Mall lot is not a municipal lot. That is privately owned as well. One point that did come up in our discussions was, you know, in other municipalities, there's a joint agreement in some of the private lots that are maybe more closely focused in business districts, and there's some MOU between the property owner and the town where during certain hours, spots can be used for the town. I think that was an interesting concept that, you know, we might want to pursue moving forward. You know, Bank of America being one, because, I mean, the facility's closed, we're not sure what's going to happen with it, but there are others too in that general area that we might want to think about, depending on what happens down there in the next few years.
Bank of America has an agreement with Rockland Trust that they have some spots that they use behind there. Councilor Flockhart.
There's some lots further down Winthrop Street toward Delby's Corner than George Street. Are they church lots?
George Street is a municipal lot.
George Street's a municipal.
The other ones
George Street is,
belong
but
to
the
the
other
church.
they belong
Yes, the
to
one
the
on the
church.
corner of Ocean View and Winthrop,
across.
on both sides of the streets at church, and the one at the corner of the top of Lincoln and Winthrop is also church.
They're all the church, okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote for this also.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusello?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes.
Thank you.
The committee handbook, we are leaving in committee. Council Fusello, do you have a motion coming before us?
Yes, I do. If you could just give me 1 second, pull it up. That's the,
247.
yes. Yeah, so it's the Water Main Master Plan and Long-Term Capital Improvement Plan. Motion reads, I move that the town council vote to appropriate $247,775 from retained earnings in the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund to a new line item to pay a water main master plan and long-term capital improvement plan or take any other action thereto. This would take our water retained earnings from $1,985,170 to $1,737,395. The committee gave it a unanimous positive recommendation.
Okay, it came out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusello?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes.
Thank you.
Council Fusillo, motion for 2873.
Yes, that motion is for veteran memorial transfer. The motion reads, I move that the town council vote to transfer $2,873 from the town council reserve line to the veteran flag and memorial supplies line, or take any other action relative thereto. This would take our town council reserve balance from $50,000 to $47,127. Once again, the committee gave it a unanimous positive recommendation.
All right, this is coming out of committee, does not require a second with positive recommendation. And just for the public and for the council, this $2,873 is for the memorial bench that we will be placing for Ramona Cooper and David Green. And this will be down on the corner of Shirley and Veterans in that area. Any discussion on the motion? I thank the committees for getting this done so quickly, and I thank the DPW Director Calla for his help in this as well. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Munson?
I just was curious, if you knew the exact placement and the nature of the bench. Is it a metal
It's a-
bench? Will it
I
have with a
believe
metal
it's
plaque?
a I'll ask DPW Director. I'm pretty sure it's a
It's more product, it's a cast,
Much like the ones on Deer Island?
well, similar. The ones that you see in Ingleside Park,
Mhm.
Winthrop has just two different bench programs, the island as opposed to the town. Theirs are actually slightly longer, a little bit different design, but, yeah.
It's a pretty congested little intersection, so I would imagine it would need to be a little bit smaller.
Well, it's, like I said, it's the same that we use everywhere else.
I see. And the plaque, will there be one in the center of the bench as?
It'll accommodate a plaque, I don't know.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
there'll be a
Phil
plaque
Ron's been
about
working on that, yeah, it'll all be done, yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Councilor Fusillo, do you have one more for
I
us?
do. It's the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund Budget Amendment. In accordance with the charter of the town of Winthrop, I move that the town council vote to amend its June 7th, 2022 votes approving the town manager's proposed Water Sewer Enterprise Fund budget and capital plan for fiscal year 2023 by decreasing the amount raised via user fees by $220,000 and instead appropriate $220,000 from retained earnings to cover the capital purchases, sewer vac truck replacement, emergency generator for Pico Ave pump station, and water distribution system hydraulics model and PRV improvements included in the financial year 2023 budget capital plan, or take any other action relative thereto. Once again, this came out of committee with unanimous positive recommendation.
All right, this did come out of committee with unanimous recommendation. This $220,000 will be coming from water and sewer retained earnings, but again, the thought is that at the end of the fiscal year, we hope to see this flow through with free cash and replenish that retained earnings. Any discussion on this motion? Councilor DeMarco?
Tony, how do you feel about this? Are you in favor of this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have the retained earnings certified, that's why it was in the budget, but this should be under, like, similar to capital being paid for free cash, same kind of a concept.
Okay.
There's been a motion that we've had for several months, but we couldn't fill it in until we had the actual certified retained earnings. Any capital projects should be coming out of retained earnings of the fund, not that. I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes?
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes. Ordinance Review Committee recommendations that will continue to be on, have a placeholder on old business. New business, the town council appropriates $750,125 to replace lead water service lines. We're going to refer this to finance. This is something we've done on a yearly basis, and we've been probably more aggressive than a lot of cities and towns around. We're down to, I believe, just over 400. So hopefully in the next 3 to 4 years, we should be finishing this up. We had asked, I know we've had discussions amongst us to try to speed it up, but I mean, we're pretty aggressive at 100 a year and think it would be next to impossible to do many more than that. But we feel that we're in a pretty good position right now to do this, so I will refer that to finance. Town council vote to increase current retirees' COLA base from 12,000 to 13,000. We had public comment on this earlier. Do think it's a good idea. We will also refer that to finance. Fiscal year 23 tax classification.
Yep, as you know, we gotta certify the tax rate before the end of the year. This will go over to finance, we'll have the, my past experience has always been done in one night, but we've gotta refer it to finance, so we wanna refer it to finance for the next meeting, and then we'll have the, Board of Assessors in, at the next meeting to give the presentation with regard to the tax rate and where we're going with that, and then we can, vote as a council hopefully at that night to approve the tax rate and move forward with the single tax rate that we normally do.
And the town manager might have, I don't know if you mentioned it or not in your town manager's report, you had something that I wanted to refer to finance this evening.
Yes, jump in.
Yes?
As everyone knows, the new post laws that are coming down with Police Reform Act, one of the things that are requirements that are gonna come out of that is body cameras for the police officers. We've been getting some pricing for that. I came from a community that was one of the first to actually have body cameras, so I've had some experience with this for the past 4 years. There's really 2 companies out there, both on the state bid list, Axon and then WatchGuard. Axon is a little bit ahead of the curve on this because they have better redaction software. One of the things that takes a lot of time is, you get public requests for the footage, whether it's got to go to the DA's office or from the public, and you really want to be able to redact that in a quick time frame. Smaller town where I came from, a little easier to do with WatchGuard. That software is a little more cumbersome and clunky. This is also a cloud-based product, so all the data is backed up on the cloud, and the redaction software is great. We did receive a grant for this, $84,000, I believe, from the state. Unfortunately, the grant's got some restrictions on it where it can only be used for equipment. Well, and this is a 5-year contract, which is why it's coming. I should have preface with that. This is a 5-year contract, which is why it's coming before the council to be referred. But it's about $291,000 over the 5 years, but only $44,000 of that is actually equipment. So we're going to lean on our legislators and others to see if we can free up the language on that grant application to front load this and use a little bit more of that grant. Right now, we'd use about $44,000 of that. The first year's payment on this would be $64,000. $44,000 of that is equipment in the grant. The other $20,000 we go from the budget, and then it'll be about, at this current rate, it'd be $56,000 for the next 4 years, get us through 2027. This is all encompassing. It would supply the initial body cameras, give us replacements if they break, the docking stations and everything else. But we'll get into more detail. Our representative from Axon will be at the next meeting to give this presentation to answer any questions the council might have, but I just wanted to kind of give a preview of what was coming down the pike. So.
And the charter gives the town manager latitude to have contracts of 3 years and less without council approval, but this being a 5-year contract, and this has some time restraints on it where this price is good through the end of this year, so we want to take a good look at it. We're going to send this to finance, and we're hoping that we're able to use the whole $80,000 from the grant towards this, and we'll see what we can do. But this is a very good product, something that we've talked about for a long time, and glad to be having it available. So I will refer that to finance as well. Back to public comment. Mr. Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jack Dowd, Precinct 1. As I spoke about at the last meeting concerning bike lanes, I'm very much opposed to a painted bike lane anywhere in the town. We had a discussion about Veterans Road, and after some couple of hours of deliberation, we figured that it wasn't a good idea to put a painted bike lane on Veterans Road. Since the last meeting, just to make myself aware of what's going on around town, I look for people on bikes. I haven't seen any. That's 2 weeks. It might be the weather, it might be the season. So does the season for bikes go from October, November till the 1st of April or May? It seems like a big undertaking to allow us to think about spending $6 million and an inconvenience of traffic and everything just for bikers. As far as the sparrows are concerned, I remember the discussion about the painted blue bike lane, but I don't remember any discussion about the painted sparrows. I don't remember any meetings where we discussed sparrows. All of a sudden they appeared. And I'm not quite sure, Jim, if you had...
No, we definitely had meetings on it. We discussed it because there was money allotted, and we discussed how we were going to use the money.
Okay, thank you very much.
We did.
So anyways, I personally would not ride a bike on any road that has a sharrow on it in this town. Pleasant Street, Washington, Maine, Revere Street, Shore Drive. I have 2 bikes. I kind of gave up on it the last year or so, COVID and being an age. But I've done plenty of biking in this town. I would never ride my bike on any road that has a sharrow. Mr. DeMarco told me that he used the sharrows to get from his house to Deer Island. On Crest
My wife
Ave.
and kids did, yeah.
On Crest Ave.
Yep.
On Crest Ave, in order to use the sharrow, you have to be in the middle of the street. With cars in the park, parked on the right, opening their doors. It's a very narrow situation up there. It's very dangerous.
I would hope my wife led them onto the sidewalk at that point.
I would hope so too.
Yeah.
There are no sharrows on.
There are no
Crest
showers
Ave.
on.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Crest
There
Ave.
are not. On Revere Street there is.
Well, we'll look again tomorrow.
There are on Veterans Road.
On Veterans Road.
Yeah,
there is.
there are on
Revere
Veterans.
Street. But I thought I saw some, Steve. I went
Not
looking
on
for them the other
Crest.
day. I'll look again. So if they're not there, they're not there. But Mr. DeMarco said he did take the showers, his children did take the showers on, from his house, on Crest Ave to, the beach and down to Deer Island. So I'm going by what Mr. DeMarco said to me, personally, but I personally wouldn't use shower roads in this town for anything. And I've witnessed young people not using the shallows and being on the opposite side, on the sidewalk, because they want to live, quite frankly. And I would do the same thing. I would always use side roads in this town to get from one station to another, and there's a lot of shortcuts. There's no need for any bikes to be on these main, Route 145 or Winthrop Street. I hope you take that in consideration if God forbid, we make this project on Revere Street happen, I don't know. It's just not right, and it's just a very dangerous situation. Thank you very much.
And just for clarification too, the project, no, you can say it if you want, I didn't mean to make a
Well, if you're
stand.
gonna- if you're
Just
gonna
for
comment about-
clarification, the
I
project
made
is
a comment, but I
it's
don't
a
know.
TIPS
You're
project.
going back and forth.
No, I just wanted, no going back and forth, I just want to make
So
clarification.
if you say something, can I say something back to you?
No, I'm just making a clarification, Jeff.
Well, I
Just
made a
to
comment.
let
If you want to make a clarification, put it on the agenda for next week.
I'm making a clarification that the $6 million is paid for by Mass DOT. I just didn't want to insinuate that it was a town expense. There was an expense to the town as part of this project, but the $6 million, it's a Mass DOT grant, and just wanted to clarify that for anybody
Well,
that was
that has
listening.
nothing to do with what I was just talking about.
It doesn't, that's why I was making a clarification. Any other public comment? I think there was a hand raised.
Kurt?
Yeah, we had Karen was up first.
Aaron?
Karen, you're up. Unmute.
Unmute.
Okay.
Karen Chavez, Precinct 2. I just have two issues, both unrelated. The first one is, I hope, and I know it's going to the finance, but I hope that you're going to really consider raising the COLA base from 12,000 to 13,000 for the retirees of this town. As it is now, the retirees, based on the COLA base that we have, get $360 more a year. By increasing it, they're gonna get $390 more a year. It's not a lot of money, but it could be a lot of money to somebody who gets a minimum retirement amount. So please, there's lots of information out there. I gave the town manager lots of information from the state retirement board, and please, really look at that closely. The other one is, let's go back to parking. One of my big bugaboos, and I've been complaining about this for a long time, there's 4 spots in front of the Harvey hearing room. Originally, 3 of them, and I think it's before Steve's time, 3 of them were allocated to the 3 selectmen, so that whenever they came to town hall, they had a place to park. Once the selectmen were gone, it became a public place to park. Now it is 1 HP, 1 30-minute, or maybe it's 2 30-minutes, I apologize, and one veterans. The veterans agent is no longer housed in town hall, so I don't know why you still need that one. My complaint is the HP and one of the 30-minute spots is occupied 24/7 by a neighbor. Supposedly, they had an agreement with town hall. I don't know what kind of an agreement they could have had, but you know what? If you live across the street from town hall and your home does not have a place to park, it's not up to town hall to provide you a place to park. I think that this needs to be looked at. And Steve, I'm sorry, Councilor Ruggiero, this is probably not in your scope, but it could be in the scope of the town manager's office to find out exactly what is going on. I apologize for not being there tonight, but I have a cold, and I don't like people looking at me thinking I have COVID. I do not have COVID, I have a cold.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Kurt?
Grimalow?
Yes.
Hello, Kurt Millar, Precinct 2. Just want to touch on a couple of quick things, or request, if possible, at another meeting for updates on. One would be where is it, has it panned out for the ferry service to be more regional? If there's any more discussions about that going on and where that stands. Another point I wanted to request information on again at another meeting where it was left off was for the rink and attaching the meter. Last thing that was mentioned was who's gonna pay for it to be done. And then a quick other note is I'm glad to hear the council's reviewing the ordinance review committee and all the potential changes that can be coming up, and how everybody's being very open-minded about it and taking more feedback. I think it's very helpful that our current town.
Karen, you can mute. I'm sorry, Kurt. Karen, please mute. Okay, go ahead, Kurt, I'm sorry.
That I think it's important that our current council, gets their input on it. I think that's very important. And then every council person that's on the council right now was voted in for our current form of government. And the changes that are being asked for to changing government, it's important that the citizens of the town do get to make decisions on that. So I just want to put that point out there.
Thank you, Kurt. And we will put those items on the agenda for the next meeting. Did Mike DeLuisa raise his hand?
He took it back down.
Okay. I'm assuming he was gonna give some insight on the parking spots out there. But we will get information on that for Karen and just in general, because it's been asked many times. Public relations, there are still openings on the planning board. I ask for people who are interested, who have that expertise, but I will go around. Councilor Honan?
No.
Councilor Fusillo? Councilor Munson?
Yes, I wanted to mention that the Oddfellows culminated their food drive for the Winthrop Food Pantry, and we collected somewhere unofficially around 700 pounds. I just wanted to thank all the generous and kind people of Winthrop for all their donations. It was incredible. I also wanted to thank the Girl Scouts, the Winthrop Police and Fire, and the Winthrop veterans for coming to our community lunch that day on Saturday. Thank you.
Councilor Belcher?
There is another meeting about the bus network redesign Thursday, at 6 p.m. The board of directors did approve the maps. That doesn't mean they're gonna instantly go into place. Our state delegation is pushing for Winthrop, MWRA is pushing for the bus route to remain the same. But this meeting is specifically about equity, so I'm curious to see what they have to say, and I encourage people from town to go.
Thank you. Councilor DeMarco?
Councilor Munson, I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it to your drive, but 700 pounds? That's fantastic, that's fantastic. And also, Councilor Belcher had a great event on Sunday as well, that was well-attended. Great to hear the 30 kids are up for the Abigail Adams Award. For those of you who don't know, Abigail Adams was the second First Lady of the United States and the wife of John Adams. There are two events going on this weekend. One's public, one's private. The public one is for the 11 Foundation. They do great work giving a, giving a scholarship to somebody from the high school in honor of Mike Mason, who was a good friend of mine, who I went to school with, who I worked with. He's been gone 11 years, so if you have a chance to attend that or make a donation, that would be great. One private thing that a lot of people may have been invited to on this council is the Winthrop Police Department has their holiday party, and that's not public, that's a private party, but if you were invited to that, I would also encourage you to go.
Councilor Aiello?
Last weekend, there was a memorial celebration for a longtime native and longtime resident Colonel Foley of Winthrop, who was a former school teacher and just a remarkable environmental and human rights activist known across the country. Not only a tribute to him, but to Winthrop High School to get to you. His granddaughter Fiona paid tribute to him with 2 songs that she sang solo, just playing keyboards. And she was in the theater group when she was here. She's now at NYU. Just stunning. I mean, the kind of talent that this town produces in the arts in particular. But just wanted to make sure people knew she's doing well in New York and just continues to improve what she's always done.
Council Flockhart? Vice President Ruggiero?
I have a couple things. So the one is more of a regional effort, but on Friday evening, it's I'm not sure what year it is, maybe the 19th annual, minus a few for COVID, Easties Elves, which is run by Representative Adrian Madaro from East Boston. It used to be an East Boston focused event, but he's since opened it up to Winthrop and Revere as well. This event, it's at the Hyatt in East Boston. All you need to do is bring an unwrapped new toy. That's your price of admission to get into the event. You donate it, and the representative's community fund will distribute it to local families in need in this holiday season. If you can't make it on Friday evening, there are drop-off locations located throughout Winthrop at the following locations: Aesthetics by Gianna at 155 Veterans Road, the Winthrop Arms, the Book Depot, Belle Isle Seafood, Nourish at Katie's Kitchen, which is in Michael's Mall, and also at the Cummings School. Those drop-off boxes will be there until December 8th, so there's a couple more days if you would like to donate. But this is a great annual event, and it's really, I think, nice that the representative from East Boston has since expanded it to the other local communities. So wanted to have a quick shout out for that. I also wanted to thank the business owners and the Chamber of Commerce for their participation in the ordinance discussions. As we talked about, that's not something that we took lightly, and we really just appreciated that feedback, and I feel like we really came to a community decision there. So I thank the Chamber and the business owners for their participation, and I would also like to congratulate Council President Lettieri for the 20th anniversary of Lettieri's Deli in Winthrop Center. And so, yeah, snaps or a round of applause.
Well, as any
Congrats,
business, that's a
yeah.
thanks to the community and the support from the community, because without it, there wouldn't be 1 year, or 2 or 3, or whatever.
Everybody in the room gets a free sub.
Yeah. I would like to just congratulate the Winthrop High School football team for their win Thanksgiving. Anytime you beat Revere, it's a great day, so congratulations to them. I'd also like to congratulate our Parks and Rec Director, Sean Driscoll, for winning the Super Bowl with St. Mary's, so congratulations to Sean. And with that, I will take a, Councilor Flockhart?
I'm sorry, I missed it, but Councilor Ruggiero reminds me, isn't our police department having a toy drive also?
They did.
They did.
It did, it's over?
I believe so.
I did not get that. Denise?
I just wanted to announce that they're having the leaf pickup on December 17th for the town
Oh, there
residents.
is one more, December
Mhm.
17th.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by
Second.
Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned.